Working at camp is the best job in the world. You get to be unbelievably silly, you get to be outside, you get to clown with some of what are gonna be your best friends. You also learn a whole bunch of stuff that they don't teach in school. You're gonna learn how to handle stressful situations, work on different kinds of teams, and how to supervise folks. Let's take a minute and talk about supervision and what that's gonna look like this summer for you at camp. Engaging with and supervising kids at camp is your number one job. We call that LOCO PARENTIS. It basically means that you are standing in as the parent or caregiver. And that's serious. That matters. These aren't imaginary kids, and this is a real job. Your job is to make sure that these kids are safe and having a really good time. Supervision doesn't have to be super hard. It really comes down to 3 big overarching rules, and then we're going to talk about 4 specific categories of places that you're going to supervise. First of all, the most important rule for supervising kids is the rule of 3. This is hard to talk about, and it's hard to listen to. But the reality is that 1 in 10 kids is going to be sexually abused before the age of 18. That can happen anywhere. It's scary and it's real. The rule of 3 exists at camp to build some ways to make sure that that doesn't happen at camp. What it means is that no one is ever alone with a camper. You'll talk more about child abuse prevention and other ways to make sure to keep kids safe throughout the rest of your training. Let's start here with just the rule of 3. Make sure you're never alone with a camper. Rule number 2, count your kids. Kurtz, what do you mean, count your kids?
Hi, I'm Kurtz, and I'm here to talk about counting your kids. When you get a group of kids, you're going to want to make sure you know how many kids you're supposed to have in the group. Then you're going to want to make sure that you learn all of their names and match those names with their faces. A lot of kids look alike, so that helps prevent mix-ups. To learn kids' names, here's some tricks that you can try. When a kid shares their name with you, make sure you repeat it back about 3 times. And if you forget a kid's name, just ask. Tell them that you'll do something silly like dump a pitcher of water on your head if you ever forget their name again. You're going to want to count your kids at multiple points throughout the time that you're supervising them. Of course, when the whole group convenes, you're going to want to count them from the beginning. And then as you move from place to place or transition throughout camp, you're going to want to do counts at each of those changes. Finally, when you're settled at a place, you're going to want to do counts about every 5 minutes.
Thanks, Kurtz. That was awesome. Rule number 3, keep your head on a swivel. We call it Safety 360. Safety 360 means when you're in a space, it's your responsibility to keeping an eye out all around you, not just the kids that you might be engaging with. Think about it like this, right? So you're playing cards with a couple of kids and you've got to supervise 4 or 5 other kids that are maybe playing catch over here. Your job is to engage with the kids while you're playing cards, but also keep your head up, looking for what's happening, making sure you're counting the kids, making sure that you know that you're counting their faces, like Kurtz reminded us, not just playing over here, right? Your job is to supervise that whole space. Safety 360. So those are the big 3 rules, right? We've got the rule of 3. We've got make sure you're counting your kids, and we've got the Safety 360, keeping your head on a swivel. Let's talk about 4 areas where you're going to be doing some supervision this summer. We're going to talk about supervising your group or your section, your cabin, your bunk, that kind of thing. We're going to talk about when you're the leading in activity. We're going to talk about when you're on kind of like a zone defense, during free time, things like that. And finally, we're going to talk about supervising in more vulnerable spaces, like maybe if kids are showering or changing, things like that. So let's talk about supervising your group. These are the kids that think of you as their counselor, right? You're the person that they go to. And you have an added responsibility when you're supervising your group, not only to be supervising what's happening in the moment, but also to be checking up on what might have happened during the rest of the time if your group wasn't with you. You're making sure that they had a good rest of their day, that nothing kind of bad happened when they were out at different activities, that they don't have any wet clothes that they haven't changed out of, those kind of things. 3 tips for supervising your group. First, try and have a one-on-one with every kid every day. So that could be 30 seconds, could be just as you're walking to the next activity, but make sure you're getting some one-on-one time with each kid every day. 2, check-in circles every day. Here's how this works. You gather your group and you're just gonna go around and each person is gonna have a turn to answer a question. A really common one here, you can do rosebud thorn, which is Rose, what's something that was really great today? Bud, what are you looking forward to tomorrow? Thorn, what's something that wasn't great? But you can also do silly ones, ask them what their favorite anime characters are, things like that, giving every person a chance to talk and listen to what other folks are saying. 3rd tip, follow up. You've got a one-on-one, you've done these check-ins, you hear that someone says that they loved archery. Next time when you're walking to eat lunch or do something, ask them about archery. Give them a chance to expand more on that. It'll feel really good when you have learned their names and you're asking them about something that they said before. It means that you listened. It means that you care. They'll notice it. So if supervising when you're with your group is kind of like home base, the second area of supervision is when you're running activities. When you're running activities, it's like you're the teacher and the kids are in your classroom. Supervision when you're running activities often looks like you give a set of instructions and then something happens where the kids get up to stuff, right? You explain, here's a craft, and then the kids can do it. Let's kind of work through 3 steps for what that introduction and kind of what that activity supervision can look like. First, introduce yourself. Let them know who you are, say a fun fact, and tell them that your role is to keep them safe and to lead an engaging activity. Let them know that's your job. Second, at the very beginning, give a set of instructions for what the rules of the space are. If you need to let them know not to go too far out of your sight or where the bathroom is or whatever, build that sandbox so they know where they can play and let them settle their anxiety when they're first in that space. It's gonna set you up for success to give them that explanation at the beginning, building the sandbox, rather than trying to reel them back in as things get a little bit wild. Okay, but the 3rd tip, realistically, sometimes things are gonna be a little bit wild. My technique, pause everything. Bring everybody back together and let them know, hey y'all, my job is to keep everything safe and it's getting a little bit wild. Can y'all help me figure out how we can keep doing this activity and be successful together? You're bringing them in to help solve the problem. So that's 3 tips for running your activity. First, introduce yourself. Second, set expectations. Third, pause to bring everybody back in if things get a little bit wilding out. The 3rd area where you're going to be supervising is kind of in a zone defense. In this situation, maybe you're stationed at basketball during free time and the kids can go between a few different areas. Your job still is to do those 3 major rules, rule of 3, safety 360, and count your kids, but you're doing it more as things come and go. So your job at basketball is to make sure everyone is safe at basketball, that it's engaging and fun, and that when kids come, you learn their names, you know who they are as they enter, and if they're gonna leave, you check in with them about where they're gonna go. See how you're still following those rules of counting your kids, but in a way that's a little bit different than other spaces. Okay, the last area that you're gonna be doing some supervision is kind of in some vulnerable spaces, like changing rooms, and showers, things like that. Chris, can you help me out?
My name's Chris, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about supervision in vulnerable spaces. The first thing that I want you to think about is that defense is actually the best offense. Having good community guidelines on how we're going to behave in vulnerable spaces will help us enforce that through supervision when the time comes right. And when I say vulnerable spaces, I'm talking about showers, changing spaces, bathrooms, and sleeping areas. So the first thing that should be part of that community agreement is 1 occupant per space. That means 1 person per bed. That means 1 person per shower stall, 1 person per bathroom stall. Then you're going to go over those rules at each of those spaces and give reminders often. And think about fun ways to do that. You could do it with a cheer or a song. When someone's in the shower, don't touch a curtain, don't touch the curtain, don't touch the curtain, right? I just did it. You can do that too. So we're gonna reinforce that. We're gonna make sure everybody understands those community guidelines. The second part of this is you're always going to want to be in earshot if you can't be in visual proximity to folks. So that means that you can see what's going on. If people are feeling vulnerable with an adult eyes in the situation, then just be in earshot. Knowing who is in charge, who is the counselor, the point person, who's going to be making sure that everybody in that space is safe is also really important. So we know that no tomfoolery of one kind or another is happening in those spaces. So just a reminder to sum it up. Defense is the best offense. We're going to have good community agreements on how we're going to behave in these spaces. And then we're going to make sure that we always have eyes or ears on the folks in those spaces to make sure that they are safe and everybody is treating each other with respect and appropriate boundaries.
Whoa, Chris, thank you so much. That was awesome. So, to recap, this is the best job that you're ever going to have. It's amazing. Okay? And it's really important. And it's really important that you supervise these kids well. You make sure that they stay safe emotionally and physically, right? And we do that in 3 big rules. 1, the rule of 3, never be alone with a camper. 2, that we're doing safety 360. We're keeping our head on a swivel. We're keeping an eye out for our entire area, not just the people that are right in front of us. And 3, that we're counting our kids, that we know who they are and where they are, and that we have everyone. You're going to have an amazing summer. Keep folks safe, have a great time, and when in doubt, make sure you learn those kids' names.